going on, y'all? It's your boy J.H. Gibbons here.
We'll see.
Welcome to yet another episode of the Achromous podcast, episode 96. That's 96 straight weeks of gems, only 4 more weeks until we get to episode 100. And I mean, there's some announcements we got to give about that, some things that are going to be going on, but we'll get to that point. We welcome you to join in this episode once again. If you are listening, it means that you are either on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you can hear one. But if you are watching us, it can only mean one thing. It means that you are on YouTube right now, and you are scrolling. You're playing with the volume button on this. Maybe I'm speaking too loudly in your ear, or I'm too low. Whatever that is, I want you to keep watching. And before you do anything else, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. You see, the next time that you hop on YouTube and you're scrolling down your feed and you're looking for something motivational, but also action oriented, so you could take into next week and actually do the things that we talk about, this episode of your Achromous podcast will be sitting right there waiting for you to listen. And most of all, we'll see.
It's free to do. So,
Unbelievable.
as you already know, I know you guys know this, and a lot of the times you probably don't want to do it because you're being told to do it. So we're gonna just take it and scale it back and just ask you, would you please mind doing that? Would you please mind liking our content, subscribing to it, turning on that notification bell just so you can receive the most newest incoming information we have to share with you, all things Achromous. We would greatly appreciate that. Each one teach one is what we're about. This is how we can get it out there and increase our bandwidth to reach more people who are like-minded like you. Thank you.
100% we'll see. It goes without saying, what a week it has been, right? We kind of look exhausted. We're going through it. We're fighting, fighting health battles, fighting tired battles. It's no different than I'm sure you guys are going through now. But what a week it has been. If you did not tune in to episode 95 of the Achromous podcast and you're still struggling to understand how important patience is in your life, pause this, go back, we'll forgive you, spend a good half hour watching that, write down the gems that you take from that, put it into whatever you're doing this upcoming week, and then you can use this episode for the following. Whatever, it does not matter. All we ask is that you take action on every single piece of advice that you hear in there. That is why we say it. That is why we're announcing it every single week. That is why we bring these gems. I think the perfect example that I saw of patience this past week was, I guess it was somewhat for me too, because I am a fan, but shout out to the Washington Commanders who beat the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles Monday night. Now, for y'all who do not know, I am a huge Commanders fan, and if you know anything about the Commanders, I'm sure it's not good, because obviously the Super Bowls that we won back in the 90s is not the topic of conversation anymore. What's happening is whatever is going on with Dan Snyder, whether he's going to sell the team or he's not, when he's going to do it. Everybody's just waiting with bated breath, and I'm hoping the god of Amazon comes down and and allows us to build a new stadium and get this thing right. But it's a good time to be a Commanders fan. We're relevant for more things than our disastrous ownership, which is awesome. It's absolutely fantastic. And watching that game, I had to have patience with my team because we were running the ball a little bit more than usual. We actually had time of possession in the first half. I think it was maybe actually the first three quarters, about 30 minutes to like 8 minutes or something. It was insane. But I think that is our formula to win from now on. And that type of strategy, you have to have so much patience, right? You're sitting there, you're watching every play. It's just a run. It's another run, another 3-4 yards. But what's happening, as we always talk about in the Achromous podcast, is that team is making progress. They're able to move down the field. They get closer to their ultimate goal of scoring a touchdown, right? And then out of all of that, once that's all said and done, their purpose for that night has been fulfilled with the W, we'll see. And that is what they were able to capture Monday night. One of the better games I've seen us play in a very long time, considering who's behind centers, considering what our line has looked like, considering our record and who we were going against at the time we already lost to in the past. So for this to come full circle, for us to look completely dominant, I'm excited for what we're going to be doing later on today against the Texans. So we'll see. I had to put that in there as something that I saw patience in, right? The team matriculated the ball down the field. They took their time. They didn't get overexcited. They didn't overextend. They kept right within what their vision was. They understood exactly what the personality of that team is, and they stuck with what worked. And sometimes in life, we'll see we have to do the same thing. If something is moving, even if we're just inching along, right? We're getting 1 yard at a time. Each time we move down the field, eventually we will score. We just got to be consistent with getting 1 yard after a yard after a yard. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It's one of those things where it's not always pretty. It could be very rigorous of a process. It can become meticulous at times. It could just feel like you're moving slower than molasses. But again, as long as you're moving forward and you're not stopping, you're making some form of progress, and that's what it's about. That's what life is about. It's just continuing moving forward, not being stagnant in whatever it is that you're doing. It isn't always the easiest thing to do because we do get distracted, right? But if we learn anything from those sort of encounters, we learn more about ourselves, and sometimes the long drawn out road is what's best for you along the way because you're able to really hone in on those areas of yourself that require true commitment and focus, right? So it does require a lot of patience, and when you learn it, you have it even when you think you don't. Sometimes there's just some things that happen that you have no choice but to be. So how could you not learn how to become patient about something that you otherwise wouldn't be, or if you have things again that is just easily accessible or like instant gratifications of things that you're working towards to accomplish or do, if you had it attainable that easily, how would you be able to truly appreciate it? To learn the lessons along the way that got you there, to help continue to make you move forward and continue that success. Me personally, I'm grateful for the lessons that I had through hardship of like earning and then learning my way through them. Um, I feel like it builds character, make you better of a person, and just better at whatever you do. And sometimes you gotta take that old clay and you gotta take that brick and just build it together, stack it one at a time, and just making sure that you have it clear, concise the first time. So if you take the slow and steady wins the race approach, you have more quality in what you do versus like leaving yourself open to just kind of pushing your way through everything else, right? So patience is a big part of life as you learn. I feel like it has no age too,
Mhm.
right? There's no age for it, right? Yeah, where I think there's this misconception that we all have sometimes, where like with age comes wisdom and things like that. I know I'm guilty of having thought that way before,
Sure.
but as I've come to develop in my own, I'm understanding that the wisdom that you attain is what you give yourself or what you put in the time you put into yourself, right? Taking the patience to learn about areas of life and things outside of what your normal day-to-day capacity of what you're interacting with are. So when you are encountering situations, you're kind of giving yourself that brain power and the strengthening that muscle that we don't always all work on. We go to the gym and we'll work out, right? But your mind is just as important as the body. So what you feed into it is, and what you give into yourself to increase your bandwidth is very important, especially in the long haul. So part of that patience aspect of it, of what you're building on, whatever the area that you're focusing on developing, you give that time to yourself. You have to master the ability to have discipline, self restraint, um, and it all falls in line with the realm of being, how to manifest patience
Mhm.
along your journey, albeit if it's something entrepreneurial related. Um, I think that's the true core to it. I mean, we have a lot of internet entrepreneur approaches where as now, like right now, this is how you do it. And
Yeah.
I got all the answers and I'm going to get you rich today. You have to follow this path, or you have the motive, the extremist motivational entrepreneurs where like, they hit you with a gritty like approach to it, but there's no substance, there's no
Mhm.
context to how you really
But
develop to build to get to where you're going.
yeah.
But those of us out there, we really understand that nothing that you see a lot of the people who attain an abundance of wealth that's really put that time in. they understood this part of the process. They understood that it was going to take long nights of working towards mastering your craft. It's going to take times where you weren't feeling your best, when you had to get your ass up and get to work to get to what you love to do so that you continue to be able to make it a success. There's going to be times where you're just completely just depleted. Like you feel like you got nothing left, but you pull up your bootstraps and you go back to the drawing board and you keep at it, right? Because that's the consistency. That 1% of giving maximum effort is going to be 100% of what you do every single time. And it's rewarded in itself because when you look back, for example, 365 days of it, consistency, if that mentality, you can look back from years prior and you can see how much you developed, right? I can clearly see my own development from last year, where I was from last year to this day to now. And I am light years ahead of my thought process in that approach because I've been taking the time to have ownership and accountability for it. And again, the central theme of it all is patience. So it's a testament to the commanders be able to show that grueling process, and if it's an ugly one, is a boring one. A lot of time, I think that word too is misconstrued. The concept of boring, right? Boring is really open to interpretation. So something is boring to you, find a way to make it work for you, to make it exciting because you're investing into you. So I really learned that back when I was in school. With some of the classes and courses I had that I just thought sucked and I just hated, but I had to hold me accountable and apply a certain approach to it. Patience being one of them, the main factor, and just build around that as the central theme. And just finding things that make it exciting for myself, to challenge myself.
Mhm.
So if you're willing to do that and challenge yourself in those aspects, be kind through your approach to it, but own it and give that 1% every time. What's your take on that, Jay?
Couldn't said it better myself. We'll see. I think the concept of going that slow for some people, they just don't want to do it, right? But at the same time, I think a lot of people's ideas of what success look like might be convoluted because a lot of the times we're seeing it through media, with social media, or you're seeing it on the news, and you're thinking, man, since I just saw them today, they must have always had this money. They must have always had, everything that their dreams could imagine. They must have always had this type of lifestyle. And that's not true. That's not true at all. In fact, a lot of the people that you may see on social media living this type of lifestyle, it's just on borrowed time, right? You might see somebody with a fancy car, a fancy house. You don't know that house is leased or just rented for a couple hours just to shoot that video. You don't know that that car is the same way, right? So you have to stay true to your own self and try to understand what your particular purpose is. And once you realize that, you have to go back and start planning to get to that point. And I think during that planning stage, we all have to be realistic with the path that we're on. We all have to be realistic with the amount of time that we're capable of putting in, right? We'll see, going back to those entrepreneurs that are online that are saying, hey, today I quit my job, and yesterday I was able to get revenue of $50,000 in a couple hours because I sold some of these white t-shirts with holes in it, right? And it's like, no, that's not how anything works. In fact, the ones that are probably selling you these ads on YouTube, wherever you're seeing it, the money that they're making is coming directly from you buying the courses that they're making. That's all that is. They're not making money on the products. In fact, before that video came out, before you were the one that saw it, millions of other people have already seen it by that time. So now that strategy that, hey, he may have been talking to you in that video that was probably recorded 7 years ago, but he's acting as though it happened today. That particular niche is probably already so saturated you won't make money in it, but he's still making money on you if you decide to pay $299 for that course. So just understand that. Understand what's happening behind the scenes, right? You've seen it in the news recently too with FTX and crypto, how this guy who was looked up as the next Elon Musk or the next, Bill Gates, one of these entrepreneur billionaire type folks that were I think he's in his late 20s, but now he's in a lot of trouble because billions of dollars of people's money has gone missing. Oh, I don't know where the money went, right? So This is what I'm talking about. It's that quick scheme that everybody is chasing. It's that fast gratification that we're always looking for. We gotta come off of that. Those things are not everything that glitters is gold. You have to understand that those things that those people have, they either take time or they build it up enough where you can't see what's going on behind the scenes. And before you put everything that you have into something, understand that not everything is meant for you. So, I mean, that
Mm,
kind of dives us and puts us into our episode today. We'll see where we talk about that balance, not just on the entrepreneur side of things for those who are listening who are either trying to build a business or are in the midst of building their business versus those who are still working the 9 to 5, who are looking for a way out, but they don't know how to get there. This episode would kind of bring those two together to show you what that balance may look like. Let's be honest, the majority of us who are either listening or engaging with our podcast in general, we are probably in that boat right now. We're probably looking to try to balance both lives, because my thought is that you're coming to something like this, to a personal development podcast like the one that we host, in order to get some advice on something that you want to chase in life, but you don't have a foundation built just yet. So since you are in that boat right now, I think it is time for us to really take a dive and really understand how you might be able to balance the work life that you're living versus the one that you were dreaming of. So for starters, I will say, um, number one, it's very difficult. Let me
mm,
just put that out there. So if you have not started yet, and again, going back to those ads that you've seen or social media, like, know that it is not as easy as it looks by any stretch of the imagination. Will C and I have been doing this for 96 weeks straight, and it's tough to really wrap our minds around that, because that is an extremely large number. But the amount of consistency that we've put into this to be able to build this community that we've been doing and building for the past 96 weeks, um, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of sacrifice. There are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that you guys are not aware of. So we want to make sure that you know that if you are going to go in this journey of building this side hustle that will eventually take place and become your main hustle, you have to have a level of expectation that this is going to be painful. You are probably going to fail or learn more than you succeed. In fact, I can guarantee you that's the case. With every step that Will C and I have taken with the podcast, or with the Achromous Fitness Store, or with the upcoming Achromous After Dark podcast, it is a step towards trying to build a community of people who are looking to rebuild their foundation. And it took us a long time to be able to really develop what that purpose was, right? We always talk about what purpose is on this podcast. And even before we got to that stage, we had to set up goals to try to understand you a little bit more. We had to give out surveys. We had to talk to people. We had to grow within ourselves to understand what we bring to the table, right? If you go back to episode 1 and you see episode 96, you'll see so many different things, right? We had to grow. We had to understand, okay, that we need a light. We need better visuals. We need to come prepared. We might need some signage behind us about the podcast. We have to be able to promote more. We have to find different avenues in order to reach more people. So understanding that allowed us to put everything in perspective, to say, hey, this is not a 1-2 year turnaround thing. We're in this for the long haul, right? Well, we're talking 10 plus years. And by that time, we know that we will be exactly where we're supposed to be because of the route that we're taking. Now, if our expectations were different and we were expecting to be generating 2, 3, 4 million dollars of revenue after the first year, going back to episode 95, where we were talking about exercising patience, we would have lost patience. We would have closed shop. We would have given up. We wouldn't have done this podcast or the Achromous Fitness Store again. We would have probably moved on to the next shiny object that was out there. Even if it wasn't for us, we would have thought to ourselves, well, this isn't working, so we got to move on, instead of working through it. And we'll see. I myself, I've seen podcasts come up while we were starting ours and they were already done. they've either run out of things to talk about, or they couldn't hack it because they weren't getting the recognition they thought they deserved. I think another part of that too is maybe their engagement levels was low, or they weren't prepared to be able to deliver something like this every single week. It's stressful, it's tough. There are a lot of times where we just can't make the time to do it, but we always find a way to carve out time and to get this done, to deliver to you every single week. And then on the other side of that balance beam, we'll see, is the 9 to 5. We are both still working that. We both have full-time jobs. We'll see. I know you are sometimes working into the wee hours of the morning trying to get stuff done, trying to make sure your team is prepared for whatever is coming next, trying to make sure all members of your teams are working on that same path, and that's difficult. Same for me. There's construction. You guys know how it's going right now. You guys know the industry of housing. It's all of it is tough. It's difficult. So that also requires time. Both of those jobs require time. So does building this. So when you go into understanding whatever your side hustle is, whatever you feel like you want to do, you have to understand that it is going to take an incredible amount of sacrifice. You have to, it's a little bit difficult too, because there are some points when you just get started going into it that people around you may not understand what you're doing. They may not be able to see the dream that you're having. So they may feel a little jaded. They may feel a little slighted at the fact that you're spending a little bit more time building something for the future. Um, and there might be people close to you that actually end up growing to hate you, or growing to strongly dislike you because you are doing something that they believe they aren't capable of doing themselves.
Mhm.
And when you do see this, and when you approach it, it's surprising sometimes, because those who you thought were always in your corner, you see how things are when you decide that you want to pull away and start growing and start building your own life. But at the same time, you ought to understand that, as I just mentioned, it is your own life. So if this is a path you want to take, if there are goals that you want to achieve, if there's a purpose that you know that you are on this planet to fulfill, you owe it to yourself to chase that. You owe it to yourself to keep pushing. And in order to achieve those goals, you have to start with a plan. So we'll see. I think, at least on the side of building a side hustle and trying to balance it with a 9 to 5, um, I would say not only is it time consuming, not only is it sacrificial, but the chances aren't necessarily on your side. There's a higher chance you will fail. There's a higher chance that there are going to be many lessons to learn on the way. But
Mhm.
do you think there's anything else out there in terms of, though, for those who are listening now and are either in a side hustle and they're trying to understand how they can balance their 9 to 5? Is there some type of tip that you think they can take from this?
I want to kind of elaborate a little bit further on what you said. Some key components you mentioned on it, and
Mm,
it just kind of made me think about another area that, especially in this particular era of time that we live in, that I think kind of we don't really acknowledge that's there, and I think it kind of leaves us distracted from focusing in on those tasks that we set for ourselves to be able to multitask and accomplish, um, expensing our time out in a way that's going to be beneficial for the patients we give into what we do. And I can only attest to this because of, like, recently for myself, something I came to the conclusion of, and I recognize that in the society we live in now, there's the form of social media that's out there. There's like the celeb media that's out there, and then there's the propaganda media of what's pushed out there, right? So for me, I've categorized it in those ways because each one of those can lead you astray from focusing on what you need to do to best maximize your effort and potential into what you're trying to grow. Because a lot of the times we get distracted and we get caught up in, like, the trends of what we think people want and what they need. And a lot of the time, in between all three of those sort of outlets that's accessible now, it is misleading, and it takes away time from us focusing on how we can better ourselves, right? I think that's a true detriment to to like being able to discipline yourself enough to be patient because like what we talked about earlier, we were kind of joking but serious about it of like, these entrepreneurs that's out there who are approaching it in a different area, right? Very aggressive at times or misleading content. But then we also have like what's publicized in social outlets, social media, what you see, then the standards usually falls along the lines of that, and then it gets, misconstrued construed with like what celeb media is, right? And some celeb media where like these are people who've already made it, right?
Mm.
Regardless of how we look at it, that's how I view those people. They've already been there, so they are the who that we all know of a lot of the times, right? And you see a lot of the blurred lines in between, like for example, on IG, and I'll give you an example, like a IG model, right? Like IG model. That's someone who would be more of a social media figure, but they're misconstrued with like a celeb, figure, and it's just a blurred line of like, oh well, if they did it, I'm an attractive person. Let me do it because I'll get that instant gratification. I can do it too, right? But then you also got the other side of from religious and the political aspects, and even with, again, what I mentioned about the media outlet as well. For example, like a TMZ or someone like some figure like that, where all of these things can really mislead you along your journey of like identifying what works best for you. Because if you stay true to yourself, to your core, you really take that time to be diligent and work on your strengths, work on your areas that you feel like could be better into what you're contributing to what you're doing, to what your overall goal is, you will get further ahead that way. Listen, there's a lot of those who's that are out there that we see where they stay tunnel vision focused on what their goals were, and are, and they stay dedicated and committed to that, not to what everyone else is doing, not to how they're marching, to the beat of their drums, but they're focused in on what their passions are and are aligning, things that's going to be of a success to it, that's going to be a contributor to it. But most importantly, they have the discipline and the method of putting the time in and being patient to give the overnighters at times to work on their craft. When the tough gets going, they put in the work. And everyone else around them sees the results of it, but they don't see the work that comes along the way. So for me, Jay, I feel like those are three areas that I like to be mindful of now in my approach. And honestly, it's helped me to perfect more and being able to give more to my presentation into what we are delivering on the Achromous. And even with my personal life, it's allowed me to like, compartmentalize what each section of this looks like and to focus in on how I can best give my efforts and time into this. And that's another form of disciplining and just being patient enough for myself to know that it's a transition that has to happen to do that. But I'm determined to make the changes necessary because I believe in what our potential is and what we're trying to do, what we're striving, and what we are giving to the world. So rather than spend my time worrying about allowing these other former outlets and how we best can reach out to them to dictate what we're doing now, I'm taking ownership and accountability to do those things and make those changes. And I can see the thought process is improving around myself of how I can be a contributor. Again, a lot of it is accountability. Um, so I think with the form of patience, when you're someone who has a 9 to 5 job that you're working, someone who's a business owner, small business owner, a big enterprise owner, a partner of a corporation or something, these are things that we want to make sure that everyone out there who's aspiring to get to any of these sort of areas in life is mindful of, because we're in an era of time where it's just so easily to get distracted from these things, and they're out there. And I strongly believe it's healthy to keep an eye out on what's happening around you in the world, but don't be consumed by it, because we get consumed so often about other people's things. Um, and again, as I categorize between the three of those, we lose ourselves, and we spend more time becoming automated to reality,
Mm.
which is the weirdest thing. And you can see it. Like you go out at a restaurant, you eat, everyone's just endlessly scrolling on any one of those sort of avenues that I referenced, right? And we get locked in and clickbaited into this and go down these rabbit holes. And this is all still fairly new. You know what I'm saying? This isn't something, but you would think this has been happening for about a millennia, the way it is. But this is brand new. This is still in its infantry form, and at the rate it's going, it doesn't look promising. But as people, we're losing those key components and qualities that make us who we are individually. Um, Hold on to that for yourself. um, Take the time to reevaluate like where you are right now. If this fits to you, then start, applying some of that work. Start paying attention to what I referenced about the social media, the celeb media, the like, the propaganda media that's out there, and see how each one of them are affecting you in your life today. Because
Mm.
I can assure you it does play a role to a degree for all of us. And I just recently had to kind of acknowledge that for myself. So the fact that we were coming up on talking about patience and how do we manage those things, that's an area to pay attention to because it is a distraction in a lot of ways. And if you're not careful, you know, time is a luxury we can't afford to spend. So you're spending more of that time wasting it on other stuff that's related to your development and growth, that time's going by. Before you know it, you got to a point where you have a shoulda, coulda, woulda moment, and that's not somewhere anyone wants to be. So just my thoughts on that, Jay,
Mm.
as you were just saying, I just wanted to share that part because I really thought that that is something that I don't ever hear about, and I think it's a very clear, concise way of identifying the current times we live in and to how to reevaluate where we are, what our priorities are for us, and how we go about moving, especially if we're talking about how to maintain the patience, diligence throughout to be able to accomplish anything that we have our mind set on to. So, what are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about that?
You know, I think there's so many distractions out there. And I think entrepreneurship in of itself can be distracting because of the different connotations that people have with entrepreneurship and what it can provide for you. And yes, it if it is successful, it could provide you a life where you could take care of yourself and your family without having to worry about where your next check is from. However, on that same time, you better hope that your business is very successful because then you're no longer worrying about your own money, especially if you have an employees, you're worrying about your entire team. If you got a team of 20 or 30 and all of a sudden you can't pay the bills for your building, you're going to be changing 20 or 30 different lives. So on that front, I think people like to glamorize what entrepreneurship looks like. And that's what we always go back to saying social media. You don't see influencers doing a lot of behind the scenes content of their entire day without any sprinkle of fun mixed in. And I've seen some vlogs we'll see online, whether they're fitness entrepreneurs or their IG models or something, and they'll show you what a day in their life looks like. And again, that in and of itself is glamorized, right? I'm waking up in this very nice, comfy bed, watching the sunrise over the Hudson River or something. I'm going to my kitchen where I have, $100,000 appliances that I'm using in my studio apartment that's costing me $7,000 a month to live in. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to show you my Ferrari and show you that I'm getting in it in order to spend 3 hours at the gym. Oh no, it's 10 a.m. I guess I actually have to start my workday now. And for the next 2 hours, I work by answering emails. Oh, and then I just go and watch a comedy show. And then I might go to the gym again, and then I come home and sleep. And that is the day in an entrepreneur. That is not true at all. That
Hmm.
they only put that out there in order for it to be able to get those views, or else like the Achromous podcast, if you're talking about things that are real, if you are talking about things that will help people, but may not be as attractive as the glitz and glam that you see posted on social media all the time, you're not going to get that type of view. We told you about what happened last week with that app that I downloaded, and I saw what I saw that a 7-year-old should not be seeing. So the algorithms are already, their minds are already made up. They know what they're going to shoot to you. So it has nothing to do anymore with what you're looking at. And that's what it used to be. If you went to the For You page, it's everything that you believe is for you. Now, if I say I love playing soccer or I like doing arts and crafts, I'm going to see somebody twerking in front of me. Those two don't mix, and they never should. But that's where we are now. If you don't believe me, you do it yourself. You create that profile, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So, yeah, we'll see. I think entrepreneurship itself is it's glamorized, and there's a lot of things that I think people need to realize going in, besides the patience that we talked about, besides the level of expectation that you may need to lower initially, especially if your pockets aren't that deep right now, or if you do not have if you're not that liquid with cash, then you have to understand that there's going to be a lot of sweat equity, which means you're going to be doing a lot of the grunt work yourself until you start getting that money in. But if there's a bit of advice that I could give, we'll see, for those to be able to balance that 9 to 5 and the side hustle that they are trying to build in order to build a better life for themselves and their family, is at least sticking to that schedule. Now, of course, 9 to 5 is just the typical, you're going to work, you're working for somebody else type of corporation. But that 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. no longer exists anymore, man. We'll see. Sometimes I start at 7:30, sometimes I end at 6 p.m. Right. So we get that, right? So for those
Yeah.
out there who are in those type of stressful jobs and you're also trying to start a side hustle, how do you then stick to your schedule? Well, my advice personally, pay a lot of attention to the thing that's actually making you money in the present, because that is the only reason why you're able to pay your bills. That's the only reason
Mhm.
why you're able to put food on your table for yourself and your family. Look, if you have a plan and you're making sure that this 9 to 5 that you're in right now is not a permanent thing, then you just keep working that plan. You stay patient. You make sure that when you're writing those dates in concrete, that those dates are as rigid as they should be. But you got to also be realistic. You got to be realistic with where you are, how long it typically takes to get there, where you're going, what the next step is going to be. You got to be meticulous in your planning if you want anything to work out for you. So when it comes to sticking to your schedule, we'll see, you said it best. There's so many different distractions politically, even with religion. I mean, and let me just stick with politically for this moment here. There's no reason for you to sit there and be played every single day, because that is exactly what they're doing. They're feeding off of your emotions. They're feeding off of your fear. They want you to hate one side versus the other. But let me tell you what, my neighbor might not agree with everything that I agree with politically, and he's still my neighbor. We're still great friends. We still see each other every Christmas. That is how the world is. We are living in a country that is a melting pot of cultures, religions, so many different things. So yes, everybody's going to have a difference, but we are all humans at the end of the day. We are all flesh and blood. We all look the same inside. That is just who we are. So when you're sitting here and you're digesting this content that is making you fear somebody else, and then have that fear turn into anger because there's hatred involved, it does nobody good. And in fact, if you're somebody who's trying to build a business, it's not worth your time. It's not worth your time and energy. Your energy should be spent building something of value, not devaluing yourself by putting that information in your mind. So we'll see. That is the one thing I would say would be sticking to your schedule. I know we talked about time sacrifices as well. It is a true sacrifice. Right now, I'm telling you, we're recording on a Saturday afternoon. That's what we're doing right now. It's a nice sunny day outside, but this is what we're doing because we know that we're building something for our community. And in order to build that, regardless how long it takes, you got to be consistent. You got to continue to grow. You got to continue to spread your wings. And that's what we've been doing. And we're 96 episodes in on that. And make sure that you understand when you are ready to make that full switch. And I just don't mean financially, I mean mentally, I mean emotionally. We'll see this, as you mentioned, this is so much more than just a physical toll that it has on your body. There's an emotional toll as well as a spiritual toll. Because emotionally you're wondering if you can keep your emotions in check to get you through these episodes these days, or all the things that are happening in our lives that we don't mention on these podcasts. You have to be able to weather that storm and come here, deliver content, knowing that somebody out there is in a worse situation than you are. So they need these words as much as you need them for yourself.
Mm.
And on the flip side of that, especially spiritually, sometimes you're asking the universe if you're doing the right thing. You're asking you're asking a higher power if you are on the right path, and if you're not, you want that path illuminated. You ask that every single day. Every single morning you wake up, you thank God that you're here. And then you're wondering if you're doing the right thing. Am I growing? Am I seeing the right signs that you're putting in front of me in order to take advantage of? Am I on the path that I know is going to bring myself and my family so much peace at the end of the day? Or an even deeper question than that, is all of that for me, right? Is that what my own destiny is? My destiny might not be that. Look, I mean, you want to tell God a joke, tell him your plan. He'll laugh right in your face. You laugh right
Yeah.
in your face. None of this truly matters. You have to understand that there is something out there that is just pulling the strings. And when that one door opens, when that one opportunity is open, you got to go to it, because that is the sign that you were probably praying for, and it might not have come the way that you thought it would. But you got to take that chance. You got to take that leap. But before you make that full switch, make sure it is not. Make sure it's more than what your pockets have. Make sure it's what your mind has, what your emotion has, and that you're physically ready to make that transition. Because there's nothing worse than going that route, becoming, making that side hustle your main hustle, and everything else collapse around it because you don't have that foundation that you should have had at the beginning.
Right there.
Mm.
I think you summed it up perfectly. I don't think it gets more clear and concise than that, guys. Um, Something to really think about as you're making these decisions in your life or where you are today. To really just make you even more aware, just self-aware of everything that's happening around you and inward too. Um, I'm sure a lot of what we shared today is something you can take with you, something that's applicable that you can put in the results um, that's going to pay for you in the future. You'll see it right away. This is something you can make a change today, and you'll see it take immediate effect in how you approach anything that you encounter as you move along with your day. Start it now. Like if you question any of what we just shared, apply it. Go look on social media. Go look. Turn your TV on. Grab your phone. Like grab another phone. Grab your iPad. Whatever you have outside of this, you pause this and come back. And within the first 5 minutes, I can assure you, you'll see everything we spoke on to be true. Go into one of these apps that's out here. You'll
Mm.
see. And that's not to shade any of them because they're out here for a reason, and it's an entertainment value that's being added to someone that's profitable,
Mm-hmm.
but it ain't lining up your pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So take a moment to go figure out how you can do that by reevaluating where you are, applying some of these steps that has been shared with you today, align it in a way that most suit you best because you matter.
100%. And when you guys are going out there and doing these things, when you're trying to figure out exactly what your purpose may be here, and you're wondering how you may balance that 9 to 5 and that side hustle that you're kind of working on both ends of the spectrum, and you know where you want to go, but it's important that that path is laid out for you before you even take that first step. And Willie's absolutely right. Look, we come to these podcasts, we don't, this is all off the top of our head. So I'm pretty sure you can find some of these online on Google, but these examples that we're bringing to you, as well as a real world application, is something that you can't find. But you are also the story, right? This is your story. These titles that we come up with, we work it so that you can work it too, right? This is the system that we're all in. This is the community we're trying to build. So it's important that you take the action that we are asking you to. And not just that, provide us with feedback. We want to hear your story of how you are balancing both right now. I know many of you out there are parents. You're working a 9 to 5. You're probably in a senior role. And on the flip side, maybe you're doing some freelance work, or you're building a small business, a small brick and mortar, or even an online business. Tell us that. Tell us your story. Tell us what you're going through. Put that out there, because I think the more realistic we all get, we will understand that at some day we will reach our dreams, regardless how long it might take. I think that is the real Will C that needs to come back. I think if people truly understand the amount of work that you need to put in, how difficult it is to get there, how important your legacy is, and how important you being honorable at what you're doing is. I think once all of that comes back, many people would be more picky with what they choose to invest in. And I think a lot more people would invest their time in things that are worthwhile, or at least, on the same path of where you want to go, versus things that might distract you for a little while or entertain you for a little while, but at the end, it has no true value for yourself. So whoever out there is listening, if you're taking all this in and you're writing notes, we want you, the person who is listening to this, I don't know your name, but I know you're watching right now. We want you to reply to that. We want you to tell your story to us, not just us sitting here, but us as the entire community. The best story that we get will be featured on the next episode of the Achromous podcast. And of course, you receive 40% off of anything in the Achromous fitness store.
I don't think you can go wrong with that.
Not
I
at
don't
all.
think there's any way to go wrong with that. And just taking that step, that initiative to get you on that road of self-discipline and self-constraint, and to reinvest focus into you so you can continue to build upon the patience needed to accomplish the goals that you desire to accomplish in this lifetime.
That's deep. We'll see. Look, we want to thank you once again, regardless what day it is, regardless what year it is, you're listening to the Achromous podcast, and we thank you for joining us for episode 96. If you are listening, I want you to understand that Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts are the best platforms to listen to us on. And we thank you for subscribing to one of those. If you are watching us, that could mean one thing and one thing only. It means that you're on YouTube. And if you are on YouTube right now, I need you to do 3 things before you do anything else. If you have not done so at the beginning of this video, I need you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. Look, the next time you hop on YouTube, you're not going to see anything about Joe Biden tripping and falling. You're not going to see anything about Trump at one of his rallies. You're not going to see another hate crime. You're not going to see violence. You're not going to fill your head with things that are low vibration, low energy, and not for you at this time. You're going to see a way to build your own foundation for yourself and understand what that purpose is, understand what that ultimate goal is, understand the many milestones that you need to get through those, and realize that you can balance more than just a 9 to 5 and a side hustle. You can balance your entire life if you understand the path that you're going down. You hit that like button, you hit that subscribe button, you hit that notification bell. We'll see. All of those things are absolutely
Free to do. It
that's
doesn't
ridiculous.
cost you anything but an investment into you. And guess what? We've been patiently going about it to deliver it each and every single week consistently to you, 96 weeks straight. And we're going to continue to do it, God willingly. So please invest in you today. Take this moment outside of anything else that you do to allow yourself to rehabilitate to become the best version of you today.
And we'll leave you with that, ladies and gentlemen. Until next Sunday, it's your boy, J.H. Gibbons.
I'm going to say.